Welcome back to the new episode of our Advent calendar. Today in this session, we will talk about building incident response plans and things that companies, enterprises should adopt while building these plans. You must have heard this multiple times that cybersecurity breaches are inevitable, and it is no longer a matter of if a breach will happen, however, when a breach happens. So if we are almost certain that the breaches are likely to happen, it is important for us to have plan around how do we handle those breaches when they do occur. And in this next couple of minutes, we will talk about how to build an effective incident response plans, what we should do, considerations we should have in mind while building these plans. And first and foremost, I think it's important for us to understand what kind of breaches we potentially could get impacted by, which is why doing a risk assessment of what kind of scenarios are applicable for me in terms of breaches. It could be defacement of my website, it could be a DDoS attack, it could be a malware infection, it could be a ransomware attack. So these kind of breaches, if you first identify what scenarios are applicable for me, then we identify which are the team members who will be involved in tackling that incident. And sometimes our thought process is often limited to technical people. We think they're only technical people responsible to handle that incident, which of course is true to an extent, but we also want to make sure that the right communication flow happens both internally, externally, which is why it's important for us to make sure that there is right teams engaged to manage that communication. It could be a marketing team, it could be a legal team to interface with right bodies, right? So that's also an element part of building those incident response plans, from doing the risk assessment to identifying the right stakeholders and then writing down the plans around how do we detect that incident, how do we analyze that incident. Once we've done that, how do we make sure we contain that incident? So all of that actually goes into that incident response plan building as well. What is also important for us to do is to go and find out what is right frameworks available, using which we can we don't have to do a homework. Using these frameworks which are available, you can draw some learnings from the likes of NIST and SANS, which guides us around these incident response plans, and reuse them for the purpose of building as well. What is also important is where we focus on the lesson learned as well, so that we can improve for the next time, so we don't have similar breaches happening and we actually make it difficult for the attackers to compromise our environment. If we put together all of these together, the next step also is super important for us to test these plans to make sure they can actually work when things go wrong. Make sure the people are trained and the plans are tested. We could start by doing tabletop exercise, by asking questions with people who will be involved in tackling that incident, if they understand the responsibilities, and make sure that if there are gaps, we address those gaps as well. So this testing of plans is also super important. With that, I think if we put together all of these things in place, when we are in a sane mind, not under the influence of an incident, we can think logically, put this plan together, so we are in the situation of a breach. We don't have to think too much, rather we can execute these playbooks that we've already created as part of this plan. I hope this is useful and you can draw some learnings and build your incident response plans. So I just want to wrap up by saying, wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and you deck your halls with a nice documented and tested incident response plans.